Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. India is a terrorist state. Modi, stop using terrorism against Sikhs. Canada's city's Calgary's town hall echoed with this particular slogan as 53,000 Canadian Sikhs turned up for Khalistan referendum. And Sikhs for Justice founder Gurpat Singh Pannu made an address to this particular crowd, also saying, let me quote him, Sikhs for Justice's choice of weapon is vote, while India's Modi is using violence to stop Khalistan referendum. SFJ is going to kill the Indian system that is responsible for genocide of Sikhs. Unquote. Punjab Referendum Commission says the next phase of this referendum is going to take place in next few months in New Zealand. Now this Khalistan referendum, it started back from 31st of October in 2021 from London, UK, and has ever been held in various major cities across many countries around the globe. Now this particular strength in the number of Canadian Sikhs turning out for this referendum, this particular phase of referendum, what does that particularly depict, and what sort of a message this particular address by Pannu carry for the Indian authorities? Also, we have seen Pakistan's Foreign Office has rejected the belligerent remarks made by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Ladakh, saying, let me quote, bravado and jingoism undermine regional peace and are totally counterproductive for the resolution of long-standing disputes between Pakistan and India, especially the core dispute of Jammu and Kashmir. Instead of maligning others for terrorism, India should reflect on its own campaign of orchestrating targeted assassinations, subversion and terrorism in foreign countries, unquote. It is interesting to note that most recently we have seen Bharatiya Janata Party, led by its Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has taken over the government in India for the record third term. And after that, we had seen the exchange of congratulatory messages also, that congratulatory message that was given by Pakistan's Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif to Indian Prime Minister. There was an exchange. Also, we saw during an important event, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar made a statement regarding Pakistan's desire of having friendly relations with all its neighbors, particularly India. What was that particularly important statement that he made at that particular time? Let me quote that Pakistan does not believe in perpetual hostility. We seek good neighborly relations with India on the basis of mutual respect, sovereign equality, and a just and a peaceful resolution of the long-standing Jammu and Kashmir dispute, unquote. We are also going to take the analysis as to what are the reasons why Indian Prime Minister resorted to this undiplomatic and inflammatory statement just upon entering into the record third term of the government in India. Let me introduce our esteemed panel of guests. We are honored to have been joined in the studio by Brigadier retired Masud Ahmed Khan. He is defense analyst. Brigadier Khan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Parvez Jamil Mir. He is senior analyst. Mr. Mir, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. On the phone line, we are honored to have been joined by Ms. Farzana Yaqoob, former Minister, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Ms. Farzana, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin with you, Brigadier Khan. Now, this particular referendum, this particular phase of referendum, let's talk about the strength that has turned up. This turnout, 53,000 in Canadian city of Calgary. What does that actually signify?
Thank you very much, Jawad. If we go back to the history, right from partition, when in 1947, basically Sikhs were promised by Nehru and then the Congress party that those migrating from Pakistan, they will be settled in Punjab, Indian Punjab. But unfortunately, that did not happen because Vallabhbhai Patel was then the Home Minister. So he decided to settle Sikhs scatteredly in Himachal Pradesh, in Rajasthan, in Jammu. So he ensured that they don't get a majority in a particular area, and subsequently we have seen the atrocities or the control by the Hindus And they basically, and subsequently it was then 54 educational conference in 1974 probably, it was Chandigarh, when they decided to go for a Khalistan, a independent homeland for the Sikhs. And in 1981 we saw then the appearance of Bhindranwala, and in 1983 then Akal Takht, and subsequently Blue Star operation and the massacre of Sikhs inside the Golden Temple, outside temple, and across Punjab. And these atrocities, and we have seen the assassination of Indira Gandhi, then the backlash was the killing of Sikhs across India, and then the revenge was taken by the Sikhs when the Air India aircraft was bombed. Then the then Indian Army chief was assassinated, and also an attempt was made on the life of the then commander of the operations in Blue Star, General Barar, who was in England. And now after that, we saw a resurgence of after the death of after the assassination of Bhindranwala, we saw there was a rise of Sikh, basically Khalistan revival, when there was a farmer protest in 2020, when there was a Waris Punjab, there was created, which was led by Deep Sidhu, and he was killed in a mysterious circumstances. So the responsibility was then taken over by, when Amritpal Singh, he appeared on the scene, and he was considered as 2.0, a Bhindranwala, a fiery speaker, and he said, we are still slaves, we need to fight for our rights and freedom. And then the Sikh, they saw the rise of Hindutva, and then subsequently the killing of Sikhs across the globe, the transnational repression, we saw the important Sikhs, they were killed. So it was in 2018, basically, if you go back in the history, in London, when Sikhs they gathered, they decided to go for a referendum. So it was again Pannu, as you highlighted. They decided, those thousands, they decided to go for a referendum across the globe. And subsequently, after completion of that, then they will go to India, Indian Punjab, and other Punjabi speaking areas, where they will go, will have the referendum. And after completion of that, they will go to the United Nations and they will ask them for a free Khalistan. So this was the entire concept, which, but as far as your question is concerned, the response has been phenomenal. If we start from England, Australia, and we saw in the United States as well as in Canada, the turnouts was 100%. So that basically indicates the Sikhs, they are willing and they are ready to have a separate homeland named as Khalistan. So same is when this basically it was when this referendum was started in England. So in Indian Punjab there was billboards and there was banners and posters across Indian Punjab supporting this referendum. So basically, no, this has threatened the Indian administration.
So threatened Indian administration, or what sort of tactics the Indian authorities are actually resorting to deal or address with this particular movement that is getting overwhelming response? I'll come back to you to take your detailed understanding regarding that. Let me proceed with the discussion. Mr. Mir, as Brigadier Khan has pointed that there has been an overwhelming response as far as this particular Khalistan referendum since its inception, 31st of October back in 2021 is concerned. He has also comprehensively elaborated the historical background of this particular movement, specifically talking about that Operation Blue Star. So the people, the Sikh diaspora, which are settled around the globe in major cities across many countries. Now, this particular referendum, they are expressing their choice. They want an independent state from India. Now, all these people who are settled abroad in major cities across the world, are these the migrants who migrated at that particular time in the wake of that Operation Blue Star?
Jawad, it's a very complicated situation. Number one, that, if you read Alistair Lamb's book, Incomplete Partition, you'll get a gist of it. India wanted out from England or the UK or the Empire, but then we as Muslims wanted out of India. Well, no doubts there are people who live in India, Muslims, and there are no doubts people who came to this side of the country, this new country, which is we call Pakistan. But what actually was not discussed was perhaps what we are talking now after nearly 70 odd years, and that is the liberation of the Khalistan movement or the Sikh state. Because the Sikhs were never happy in there, because we know what happened with them. We know the atrocities. Brigadier Masud has very clearly pointed out all the atrocities and the inhuman attitude and behavior of the Indian forces towards the Sikh community, particularly if you see running over of the most famous Golden Temple in Amritsar after the assassination of the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. But what we need to understand is why. Why is it that there are 27 states, over 27 states, and why is it that there are indigenous movements going on? There are the Tamils and you name it, Assam, Tripura, Mizus, Nagas, and of course the Khalistan movement, and along the Kashmir issue and the Kashmiris. So why is it that nobody is happy in a country like India? There has to be reason, because India never developed out of the old caste system. Even today, you look at how the Dalits are being treated in India, you look at how the Sikhs are being treated in India, and now latest, they're trying to reject the Sikhs and the Muslims to join in the Indian army. Why? Because as rightfully pointed out by Brigadier Masud, Hindutva is now overtaking the entire area. Yes, there are good Indians. You can't blame the entire India for this. Yes, there are good people in India, but this band of inhuman and inhumane culprits are the people. I don't know why they vote for them. I don't know what kind of lollipops they give to them. But just prior to the elections, everybody thought, oh, India will get better. Even I thought that Modi will come back a changed person. But I'm sorry to say, that has not happened. And this indigenous movement is continuing. You've seen it in Canada. You've seen how a Canadian Sikh of Indian origin was murdered, and you've seen how Justin Trudeau took notice of it, and of course, rest of the world. So what we're seeing right now is a blatant violation of human rights in India and of course in Israel. And this is being supported by the Zionists on one side and by perhaps by the Indian lobby on the other side. Somebody's got to come along, Jawad, and rectify this situation, because situation is building up.
What could be the possible options? I'll come back to you, Mr. Mir, to understand that. What could be the manifestation? Somebody has to put in some measures. There has to be some correction as to the policy of the Indian government and the Hindutva running deep down into the Indian system. Now, let me proceed towards Ms. Farzana. Ms. Farzana, when we talk about Bharatiya Janata Party, on one side, it has taken over the government for the record third term, specifically regarding treatment towards the Sikh community in India ever since 1947 up till that Operation Blue Star and up till now. Has that treatment during all the tenures of different political parties in India under Congress or under BJP, was it similar or was it different? And if it was different, what were the differences and owing to what reasons? Ms. Farzana, can you hear me, please? I think we've lost the connection. We'll try to reconnect with her. Brigadier Khan, now this treatment towards the Kashmiris, towards the Sikh community in India during the Congress tenure of the government, and now Bharatiya Janata Party, of course, is driven by the Hindutva, and that is taking deeper roots in Indian society all across. This is the third record term by the Bharatiya Janata Party. So was the treatment towards the Sikh community similar during the governments of both the parties, or was it different?
No, it is... This Hindutva-led government, as you highlighted, they are totally against minorities. When we talk of minorities, this includes Muslims, Christians, as highlighted, Dalits, even Dalits, the low-caste Hindus, they are against them. And the way they are being treated, if we talk of the way they handle the farmers' protests initially, but they were forced, finally government was forced to accept the demands and subsequently the killing of Sikhs, the Sikhs basically those responsible for the Sikhs for Justice, the organizers of the referendum, starting from Najjar and then Roop Dewan Singh and Panjwar here in Pakistan and elsewhere, a number of Sikhs they were assassinated. And then there was Amritpal Singh, and he was basically he protested peacefully across in Indian Punjab. So the entire security forces they were after him, and eventually he was arrested and he was taken, and he has been now in custody in northeast India in Assam, thousands of miles away from Indian Punjab. So that is the threat the Hindutva regime they are fearing from these six leaders. And subsequently there was another Sidhu Moosawala, a very famous singer. She was also accused of airing voice of the young Sikhs. So that's why he was also eliminated, and subsequently and the responsibility was later on it was put on some of the mafia. So these are the steps taken within the Indian society, and basically they are against it. And more recently there was a story of INS Brahmaputra. So the story which came on the social media, and it was said there were 4 Sikhs basically they were involved in the in capsizing of that Indian naval ship. So Sikhs basically now they have realized independent Khalistan, and they basically now refer Indian Punjab as Indian occupied Punjab as a whole. So another important thing is the 20% of Indian army armed forces they constituted by the Sikhs. So that is a threat. When Indira Gandhi, when the Golden Temple was stormed by the Indian security forces, so there were hundreds of thousands they deserted military units. So still they fear, they don't trust Sikhs as well as Muslims and Christians in higher posts. That is very important. So probably it will take some time to understand.
20% are Sikhs in Indian Army. That's a considerable.
20%.
20%. It's a
considerable. Because when during the Britishers' time it was 30%. So now it is 20%, and they are the basically, and look at the importance of Indian Punjab. Breadbasket of the entire India, 20% of that Indian armed forces, and Punjab shares borders with Pakistan. So that is the importance of Punjab.
Indian Punjab.
Indian Punjab.
I'll come back to you. When there is so much importance associated with Indian Punjab, 20% of Indian army, breadbasket of India, the border with Pakistan. So why the Indian authorities are resorting to those assassination attempts transnationally? I'll come back to you to understand your view regarding that. Now, we are joined on the phone line by Ms. Farzana Yaqoob, former Minister, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Ms. Farzana, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, talking about the Khalistan referendum, when we talk about this referendum, as since it started back on 31st of October back in 2021, has been held in several cities across many countries ever since. Now, regarding the significance of this referendum, does it carry any sort of legal value? Can the international bodies such as the United Nations or the United Nations Security Council take action, keeping in view the kind of turnout that has been seen during these phases of referendum, which has been, of course, overwhelming?
Thank you so much. So the legal value or worth of having referendums in countries other than the original place where the issue lies sadly does not have any legal positioning. But what it does is it keeps this issue highlighted. Also, it keeps the people that are attached to this issue, which is Khalistan. You know what is happening in Indian occupied Punjab. It keeps it alive, and so our Sikh brethren are very focused on what they desire, and these regular referendums are just their voices where clearly they desire freedom from Indian government. Now, if the world powers would desire, they could actually give this an importance. I tell you, if it were any other country, or if it were not one of the minorities. Look at The only two instances where countries have been broken into two pieces, or people have been given the right of plebiscite and then independence to some extent, is Timor-Leste and South Sudan. Both of them wanted freedom from Muslim governments, and that is where they have been active. But other than that, it has never happened that a country, an existing geographical territory, has never allowed any of its territories to freely separate itself. It has always been via war. The recent incident of Crimea being taken back by Russia. So the only way one can separate itself from a country is via war, to join another country, because this is where Kashmir comes in. The only place that desires to join another country, that is why Kashmir is so different. Kashmir wants to join Pakistan. Once again, one of the ways of getting connected with another country is only war. Legal processes could take place, as we've seen recently when it comes to Palestine. The International Court of Justice has been very vocal, has taken up cases which were filed by South Africa and other African countries. But whatever the ICJ decided on these cases, America, UK, France, countries like Germany are not accepting these decisions. America particularly is very, very anti anything when it comes to Israel. So we could say that at the moment these referendums don't carry any worth. When it comes to the Sikhs themselves, they cannot be separated. But if America wants, these referendums can become very important. They could actually lead to an independent Punjab.
Right, Ms. Farzana, your point is well taken. Let me take this point to Mr. Mir. Mr. Mir, what do you have to say about this? When we specifically talk about the significance of these referendums, we have seen these referendums particularly happening in the major cities in those countries that actually matter on the world stage. So naturally, the organizers, those who are supervising these referendums, might have thought about some sort of significance that might be associated with it. Firstly, we understand that it highlights that particular issue, but what else? What about the legal value of that? Could subsequently it can lead to the United Nations or the United Nations Security Council to consider these referendums and make them the basis to take any corrective action as far as the Indian government is concerned and its treatment towards Sikh community is concerned?
Jawad, if the United Nations had any tooth or nail, they would have done it a long time ago. If you remember, till 1957, Jawaharlal Nehru wanted plebiscite, which we today call a referendum. The question is, why did the government of Pakistan, through the years, play a docile role? We were docile. They came up with 370, 35A. And then, of course, we've seen the developments which went on. Why is it that, when something happens, we all of a sudden wake up in the light of what India does, rather waking up much before? I've mentioned it many times in your shows and in others. We had fantastic ex-officio embassies of Kashmir in the European Parliament, in London, and of course in Washington. But because of their lobbying, we had to just go down the drain. Now, whose fault is that? I don't blame others. I can understand India, going after us, tooth and nail. They'll go after us. That is their modus operandi. But what about us? Why do we go docile? Why don't we go and react to it? Why don't we fight it out? Their members, they're sitting in Geneva, outside the United Nations. Their members are sitting outside the White House. Their members are sitting outside in Trafalgar Square. We do oppose.
For the interjection over here, what are your recommendations? What must be done on that front to make it more effective? This particular case of Kashmir in particular, when we talk about what Pakistani authorities need to do to make that particular campaign more effective on the international front?
Now, this is a very stinging and, as they say, $1 million question. Well, for starters, the Kashmir representation should be started again. The Kashmir centers, which were based in Washington, New York, Washington, London, and of course in Brussels, they need to be reactivated. If you can't reactivate Washington or London, well, reactivate Brussels. Do it. There are plans. I was given plans by the Kashmiri, the people who are heading it, Barrister Majid Trambo. Use that plan. Redevelop your strategies and come back. We've got to. We used to have wonderful, dialogues with the Indian, track 2 diplomats and Indian Army officers. There were fantastic officers, from the Indian side who used to come along. We had Mushahid Hussain. We even had Maulana Fazlur Rahman, Sherry Rahman, you name it. And it was continuing. But we disbanded. We disbanded with the result. All Jawad Tehami is asking questions in his program, and there is nothing else going on. We need to be talking on an international podium to express what we want. But nobody, nothing is happening on that. And even so, but 5-6 years ago, there was a huge demonstration outside 10 Downing Street, and everybody was raising their slogans in Urdu. I went up to, all these people. I said, do you know that the people who are standing here, there are all kinds of foreigners, do they understand what you're saying? Whatever you have to say, speak in English. They will understand what you're trying to say. They will understand your plight. They will understand what the people of Kashmir are going through. The thing is, we need to remotivate and reorganize our strategies. Jawad, we are still on the old, theory, self-determination, execution, mass murders, mass graves and all that. We've got to grow out of it. We've got to go and tackle our opponents in the right way as they tackle us. They do it diplomatically, we do it emotionally. They do it practically, and we don't react practically. So what we need to do is re-strategize ourselves, and believe me, we can make headway and headroom. That's the way forward, Jawad.
Brigadier Khan, what's your understanding? Re-strategizing ourselves when it comes to making our campaign as far as the Kashmir dispute on the international fora or the international front is concerned. We saw after that revocation of Article 370, this particular issue was taken up by the United Nations Security Council after a long time, twice. We saw it was talked about also in the US Congress. The British Parliament took up the matter. There was a discussion that happened in the European Parliament after that. But keeping that pace intact, keeping that momentum intact, what more needs to be done and make the international organizations, particularly when we talk about the United Nations Security Council, whose responsibility it is to implement those relevant resolutions?
I entirely agree with what PG Mir Sahib has said. And there is a requirement of to be more proactive as far as the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, and we need to highlight it. At the same time, we cannot ignore the resolutions passed by the United Nations Security Council, which are still intact. So basing on those resolutions, we need to move forward. But at the same time, we need to activate those, as highlighted by PJ Mir Sahib, those forums, and highlight the Jammu and Kashmir issue. For the last some time, I think we have not given that importance which should have been given to this important core issue with the India. So therefore, there is a requirement at our government level, at our ambassadors. Probably I can see our permanent representative Munir Akram Saab expressing his views on the issue as and when required basis. But still, there is a requirement to be more proactive as far as the issue is concerned.
Right. Let's go back to that particular Khalistan referendum. Yeah. There was a speech or address made by Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. Now, talking about, there's a comparison of the policy of Sikhs for justice, their weapon being vote, as compared to that weapon of violence that is being used by Narendra Modi's government over there. How do you look at that, this particular comparison, vote versus violence?
Basically, this Gurpatwant Singh is the more I can say is the motivation behind this entire referendum for 6 for justice. That's why there was an attempt was made on his life when the Indian Raw was involved, and recently one of the Indian, Nikhil Gupta, was extradited from Czech Republic to United States. Probably, as I consider, this is basically a symbolic victory. It will be a symbolic victory when this referendum is completed, so they can take a stand and can tell the world there are 30 million Sikh diaspora across the globe, 30 million. So they can play an important role. So they can influence the politics inside India. So they can influence those Sikhs in India and Punjab and elsewhere. So they will create a problem for the Indian administration.
Okay, so when we talk about those transnational assassination attempts, particularly of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada, and that was spoken so categorically about by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau himself on the floor of the Parliament, and that actually led to the diplomatic relation between India and Canada to nosedive. Ever since we saw that relationship didn't come back to that very same level as it used to be. Now, these assassination attempts, that actually reveal the very true face of India under BJP and Narendra Modi of involving in and sponsoring transnational terrorism.
Yes.
Now, who has to talk about it? Who has to take corrective measures regarding that? Or who has to impress upon Indian authorities that this is unacceptable? This is Pakistan's stance. It's been long held stance by Pakistan. But now, since the Western countries have themselves been hit with these assassinations and assassination attempts, they've been revealed so clearly.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and probably it is the responsibility of the Five Eyes countries. Those basically they are affected countries. And Jake Sullivan, when he visited probably last year India, he said, as an American, they said we will not compromise on our moral principles. We will not compromise with the Indian authorities as far as these assassination attempts are concerned. So there will be no compromise. So they have taken a stand as far as this. We will see the development when this Nikhil Gupta is when the trial starts. And then subsequently, and we have seen the stand taken by, as you highlighted, by Justin Trudeau. So they have taken, but at the same time, one important thing is the national interest of the countries, which matters in the longer run. And
so that is a very important question to be talked about. The national interest when it comes to its bilateral relation, as far as the geopolitics in the larger scheme of things is concerned, the bilateral relation of the US with India, when we talk vis-a-vis China, the policy of the United States of America and other Western allies there. But what India has done on their home soil, those assassinations and assassination attempts. So which one carries more weight as far as the formulation of the policy of the authorities in the US and Canada or the Western allies is concerned?
Probably they will try to balance out the things, but still the priority will go to the countering China.
Countering China. Well, Ms. Farzana, what's your understanding? Which carries more weight? That very concept that the authorities in a certain Western country, particularly in the US and Canada, want to have before its own public, or it comes to the larger or the grand scheme of things when it comes to containing China and extending good relations with India, no matter how many assassinations or assassination attempts it resorts to transnationally?
At the moment, what we have clearly seen is that America stands by India. There might have been some minor statements, but you can look at all the White House statements. None of them have been really seriously reprimanding of India when it comes to Indian actions against its own minorities within the geographical territory of India, let alone Kashmir, which is an internationally recognized area and not a territory of India. We also see that India is at the moment being treated as the prince of this region, as you mentioned, because the desire to contain China is very strong. And India is playing an important role. But what the West feels is that by having a stronger India, they can somehow place it or probably put up a dummy in front of China. Uh, what what we see and realize is that slowly and steadily, these nations who have been, the champions of democracy, the champions of human rights, the Palestinian issue at the moment has literally uncovered all their hypocrisy. There is no democracy, there is no human rights when it comes to the vested interests of these developed countries. The vested interests are very much with India and Israel, and we will hardly see any change when it comes to Sikhs having their being facilitated for their independence. Canada has had to speak up because of the brutal murder that took place, and when the investigation which clearly showed not only links but actual the design connected India in these actions. India is trying to portray itself an equivalent of the superpowers because this is what initially and previously the superpowers have done. But India is sadly failing. Why? Because America, UK, France, any of the countries which have the veto power have never been really caught red-handed in their actions and activities in other countries. Sometimes they have. India gets caught every time. This is not the first time. Their agents were even apprehended by Pakistan. The dossier was presented. So India is playing at a very weak wicket, but it seems to be strong because it has the backing of Western powers, and we also see that the territory that is joining India and China will be volatile, but still we see that India keeps getting the backing of America, particularly.
I seek your pardon for the interjection. I just want to proceed with the discussion. Please stay with us. Mr. Mir, when we talk about the desire of the West or the US in particular to contain China being very strong as compared to the assassination attempts or the assassinations perpetrated by India on the foreign soils, which one do you think carries more weight? And if this particular desire to contain China through India was very strong on the part of the Western nations, particularly the US and its Western allies, why would these nations at the very first place have highlighted these assassinations or assassination attempts? They could have downplayed those naturally if that desire was so strong.
Jawad, the world is a very cruel place. Today, I'm talking today, America and Japan are going into some sort of an agreement, safeguarding their interests. And yet, America is the country which bombed the two cities, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And today we are going into, some sort of a defense pact, and that is to contain India. To China. And of course, this nexus of India, Japan, and United States. So it's all about their own interests. And these interests will always be there. I particularly remember Benazir Bhutto's statements that there is no friendship. There are interests, and there are permanent interests. And that's how you move forward. And that's the way forward. But what we do is we react after something has happened. And that is our biggest fault. That is our biggest fault, that we do not have international lobbying. We are very weak in comparison to India, into lobbying our own affairs, into letting the world know our own difficulties and our own issues. But at the end of the day, in contrast, India comes along and even a small parrot or a pigeon or somebody dies, they blame Pakistan for it. Why? Because they find every problem within their own country and they only blame Pakistan. Why? Because they cannot withstand and face their own people. There's a lot of support of Pakistan in India, lots, I'm telling you, but they're suppressed. There is so much of suppression of, freedom of expression that you will be amazed. But so what we need to do is we need to capitalize, like I said before, we need to improve our international lobbying. We need to improve, people who come on foreign televisions and express and explain Pakistan's case. Because wherever you go, Pakistan's case is always in a negative, not in a positive. And the people who
Mr. Mir, now this recent particular address made by Narendra Modi in Ladakh, he has actually come up with that particular old held rhetorical statement again, accusing Pakistan again of terrorism. And now there's been a rejection of this belligerent statement made by the Foreign Office, saying that India should reflect on its own campaign of orchestrating targeted assassinations, subversion and terrorism in foreign territories. We have seen in the recent past the kind of the acts the Indian authorities have been involved into, particularly in the Western countries on foreign soils. So that clarifies that what Indian authorities are basically up to. Now, what was the need? We have seen recently a new government has been formed in India. What core reasons do you associate with this undiplomatic and inflammatory statement that has been made by Indian Prime Minister?
Well, for starters, they haven't got the majority. And that is one of the reasons. Now, don't forget, India is a democracy which has been controlled by a junta, by one of those people who don't believe in democracy, by those people who suppress democracy. You look at, like what we discussed earlier on, look at what this government has been doing to all the minorities in the country. Brigadier Masud has, rightly pointed out, this is what they do. This is what they do. But now, when we speak about somebody, they say, what is, what is that, your business? Why do you speak on that? Well, in a way, right. But it is the duty of the superpowers who are aligned to this country, but who are using this country as a proxy state to further their own interests. We basically do not fall in that category. We have been termed as a...
particular, when Mr. Mir, now looking at this desire by Pakistani authorities, Pakistan has always been desirous of having good and friendly relations with India. The core dispute remains to be the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, of course, but Pakistan remains open to dialogue with India. That particular statement coming from Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, that Pakistan does not believe in perpetual hostility. So when Pakistan extends that particular hand towards India, let's sit together, talk about the outstanding issues. Even in the past, we have seen Pakistani authorities asking India if there was any concrete proof of any involvement from Pakistani side in terrorism that India so much talks about or tries to malign Pakistan over. It should share with the Pakistani authorities. Never ever has Indian authority come with any sort of concrete evidence. So what's the point of pointing fingers towards Pakistan and not considering that hand that Pakistan extend towards India of having open dialogue to resolve those outstanding issues with it?
Jawad, we've got two choices. Either we go to war with India, destroy ourselves, destroy themselves, and then basically go into poverty and look for international aid. Or the second step is, as what you mentioned earlier, we've got to continue talking. The dialogue is the only thing. What we do right now, of course, what the Indian Prime Minister says, and we rebut it, this is what you call diplomatic warfare. Now, this is diplomatic talk. It means neither here or neither there, because India has done it, and we can only say that,
Where do you see Pakistan-India bilateral relationship heading? Mr. Mir, where do you see under the third tenure of the Bharatiya Janata Party led by Narendra Modi, it is going to have that particular government for the next 5 years. Where do you see Pakistan-India bilateral relationship heading, with Pakistan desiring friendly relations or good neighborly relations with India, but India not opting for that?
They have no other option except to talk to us. We see them as our elder brother. Yes, we have economic problems, but it happened with India. They had only $1 billion when they went into an economic depression. So these things happen. Now, what we need to do is continue talking, and at the same time, Jawad, we've got to explain, express, and convince our case in the international market. That's the only way.
Fortunately, we're short of time. I'll have to take this point to Brigadier Khan. Now, Pakistan being desirous of having good neighbor relations with India, then that provocative statement again comes by Indian Prime Minister just upon entry into the third term. Oh, I mean,
the reason I will tell you. One point is highlighted by PG Mir Sahib. The second is the frustration now, the resurgence of freedom movement, and in the south of Pir Panjal range, the recent activities, the killing of Indian security forces, 3 officers, 15 soldiers in this month. So that has jolted the Indian administration. So they have seen a new threat now developing in the south of Pir Panjal. What to talk of Kashmir Valley? So that's why they are now accusing Pakistan that those killing security forces, they have come from Pakistan. They are talking of so-called special services group or regular troops and etc. So
but they have got no concrete evidence
no
regarding
evidence at
that.
all.
As always, Brigadier retired Masud Ahmed Khan, defense analyst, joining us in the studio on Skype. Jamil Mir, senior analyst, joining us. Thank you very much for your time. Also on the phone line, Ms. Farzana Yaqoob, former Minister, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Ms. Farzana, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.